In 1960, the New York Yankees set a record by scoring 55 runs in the World Series. They beat the previous record by 12 runs, and in the 64 years since, only the 1993 Blue Jays have come within 10 runs of their mark. They scored 28 more runs than their opponent, the Pittsburgh Pirates, which is the largest run differential in World Series history. Yankees second baseman Bobby Richardson won World Series MVP, as he drove in 12 runs during the series, a record that stood uncontested until Freddie Freeman tied it this past year. It was a total mismatch, a show of sheer dominance by New York. Except for the fact that they lost. The New York Yankees were very good at baseball in the 1950s. In fact, they had been very good at baseball since they acquired Babe Ruth from the Red Sox in 1920. Led by Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, and Mickey Mantle, the Yankees appeared in 24 World Series from 1920 to 1959, and they won 18 of them. Heading into 1960, the Yankees had appeared in 60% and won 45% of the previous 40 World Series. They had also appeared in 10 of the last 13 World Series, winning 8 of them. The Pirates, on the other hand, had not played in a World Series in 33 years. Their last World Series appearance was in 1927, and their last World Series title was in 1925. The Yankees had won more World Series titles in the past 7 years than the Pirates had ever won. Despite their 40-year stretch of dominance, the Yankees entered the 1960 season with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They were coming off of a disappointing 1959 season in which they finished third in the American League. Not only did this snap a streak of 4 straight American League pennants, but their 79, 75-1 record was their worst regular season record since 1925. It was also the first time in 13 years that they had won fewer than 90 games in a season. They came into the 1960 season determined to prove that their 1959 season was just a fluke, and that they were still just as dominant as ever. The 1960 team was largely the same as the 1959 team, except for one key change in the outfield. In the offseason, the Yankees sent aging right fielder Hank Bauer to the Kansas City Athletics, along with pitcher Don Larson, left fielder Norm Syburn, and backup first baseman Marv Throneberry. In return, they received bench players Joe DeMaestri and Kent Hadley, and 25-year-old outfielder Roger Maris, who would take Bauer's spot in right field. Here's what the average Yankees lineup looked like during the 1960 season. I say average because it was very flexible, with many players sharing time at their positions. Yogi Berra and Elston Howard split time behind the plate, with Berra also playing some games in the outfield. Hector Lopez was primarily a third baseman before 1960, but he moved to left field to make room at third for Clete Boyer, who was a terrific defender at the hot corner. That said, Boyer only played 99 games at third. He got frequent days off and also played some shortstop. When Boyer wasn't at third, the position was played by Gil McDougald, who also played some second base. Tony Kubek was primarily a shortstop, but he also played games in the outfield. The only everyday players on the 1960 Yankees that didn't play multiple positions were first baseman Bill Skowron and center fielder Mickey Mantle. There were only 8 positions to occupy, as the DH had not been introduced yet, but the Yankees somehow managed to have 10 players play over 100 games in 1960, with all 10 of those players also having over 350 plate appearances. The Yankees' pitching rotation featured Whitey Ford, Art Ditmar, Bob Turley, Ralph Terry, and Jim Coates, with former AL MVP Bobby Shantz being their best arm out of the pen. The Pirates had a nearly identical record to the Yankees in 1959, 78, 76, and 1. One more loss, one fewer win. Unlike New York, though, this was not a disappointment for Pittsburgh. It was actually their second best season since 1948. From 1949 to 1959, the Pirates finished 6th, 8th, 7th, 8th, 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 7th, 7th, 2nd, and 4th in the National League. They had been bad for a long time, and they certainly didn't share the Yankees' championship or bust mindset. The fact that they had a winning record in each of the previous 2 seasons was an accomplishment on its own, and they would have been content just to keep trending in the right direction in 1960. The Pirates began the 1960 season with virtually the same roster that earned them a 78, 76-1 record in 1959. All 8 of their starting position players were the same, as were their top 3 starting pitchers and their top relief pitcher. Their lineup looked like this. Unlike the Yankees players, who frequently switched positions, none of the 8 starting players for the Pirates played a single inning at any position other than their primary one in 1960. They did have a few bench players that saw a significant amount of playing time, namely Gino Cimoli, Hal Smith, and Rocky Nelson, but they appeared only when a starting player was given a day off or as pinch hitters. The Pirates' pitching strategy was also dissimilar to the Yankees, as they opted not for a 5-man rotation, but for a 4-man rotation, made up of Bob Friend, Vern Law, Harvey Haddix, and Vinegar Bend Mizell. Roy Face was the primary arm out of the pen. The Yankees were a streaky team in 1960. They started off strong, going 10-5 in their first 15 games, but cooled down considerably for the rest of May. Following a sweep in Baltimore, the Yankees stood in 4th place on June 2nd, 6 games back of first with a 19-19 record. Then they got hot. From June 3rd through July 3rd, New York went 24-6, jumping from 4th place to 1st place, from 6 games back to 3 games ahead. A lot of this had to do with performances from their star player. For the first 38 games of the season, through June 2nd, Mickey Mantle was hitting .239 with 7 home runs and an .893 OPS. From June 3rd to July 3rd, though, Mantle hit .320 with 12 home runs and a 1.198 OPS. The decision to trade for Maris was also paying dividends for New York. He went 4 for 5 with 2 home runs against the Red Sox in the first game of the season and never looked back. Through July 3rd, he was hitting .321 with 25 home runs and a 1.104 OPS in 66 games played. The Yankees cooled down again, going 10-13 for the rest of July and falling to 2nd place in the AL, then got hot again in August, going 22-11. On September 1st, they had a 75-50 record, which put them 1 game ahead of the Baltimore Orioles for first in the American League. They started the month of September with a 3-game series against the Orioles in Baltimore. They had their top 3 pitchers starting in the series: Ford on September 2nd, Ditmar on September 3rd, and 22-year-old rookie Bill Stafford, who had a 2.16 ERA in 25 innings pitched since making his MLB debut, on September 4th. They got swept. The Orioles shut them out in each of the first 2 games, and the Yankees mustered only 2 runs in the 3rd game. The Yankees were now 2 games behind the Orioles with 26 games left to play. And of those final 26 games, the Yankees won 22 of them. Included in that was a 4-game series against the Orioles, just 12 days after the sweep, but this time in the Bronx. The Yankees swept them right back, extending their lead in the standings from 1 game up to 4 games up. That's the thing about the 1960 Yankees. They were very hard to beat at home. Their record at home was 55-22 in 1960, as opposed to 42-35 on the road. The sweep against the Orioles would kickstart the Yankees' longest winning streak of the season, as they would win their final 15 games. They finished with a record of 97-57, 8 games ahead of Baltimore. Roger Maris led the American League in slugging percentage, runs batted in, and WAR, and he finished 2nd in home runs. He would take home the AL MVP award. Mickey Mantle led the league in OPS, home runs, and runs scored. He was 2nd in WAR behind Maris and would finish 2nd in AL MVP voting. The 1960 Yankees had a team OPS plus of 108, which means that they were 8% better than the rest of the league at slugging and getting on base. Their 108 OPS plus was 2nd in baseball that season, behind only the National League's Milwaukee Braves. Mantle and Maris did most of the heavy lifting, though. After those two, the only other 1960 Yankee with an OPS plus over 120 was Bill Skowron. 4 of the Yankees' starting players actually had an OPS plus below 100, meaning that half of the Yankees' primary batters were below average hitters, and 3 of them had an OPS plus below 90. Although the Yankees were a good hitting team, their offense was mostly carried by a few big bats in the middle of the lineup. New York also had a team ERA plus of 103, meaning that their pitching was slightly above average at preventing earned runs. Perhaps the Yankees' strongest attribute in 1960, though, was their defense. They were worth 76 fielding runs as a team, with fielding runs being based on total zone for the 1960 season. They were by far the best defensive team in baseball in 1960 according to this metric, with the second best team, the Orioles, being 27 fielding runs behind them. They had 5 players in the double digits: Roger Maris, Clete Boyer, Tony Kubek, Gil McDougald, and Bill Skowron. The 1990 Oakland A's and the 2001 Seattle Mariners are the only teams in MLB history to have more than 5 players with 10 or more fielding runs in the same season. That was the Yankees' path to the World Series in 1960. 2 superstar hitters, really good team defense, and timely hot streaks. The Pirates' path to the World Series looked a bit different. They did not have the peaks and valleys that the Yankees had. No stretches of dominance followed by stretches of mediocrity, just consistent solid play all season long. They didn't have to battle to win the National League pennant. After a brief back and forth with the Giants for the top spot in the NL early in the season, the Pirates entered first place on May 29th and never looked back. They remained in first place for the next 126 days, and won the National League pennant with a 95-59 record, 7 games ahead of the second-place Milwaukee Braves. The way that they won games also differed pretty drastically from the Yankees. The Pirates did not have a Mickey Mantle or a Roger Maris leading their offense. They did have a young Roberto Clemente, but he wouldn't truly become a star until 1961. They had only 2 players with an OPS plus over 125, and interestingly, they were both bench players. Hal Smith and Rocky Nelson had a 131 and 132 OPS plus respectively, but they both had fewer than 300 plate appearances. Among their starting players, Roberto Clemente led the way offensively with a 121 OPS plus. That's solid, but it's a far cry from Mantle or Maris or even Bill Skowron. What the Pirates lacked in star power, though, they made up for in depth. 6 of the Pirates' 8 starting batters had an OPS plus over 100, meaning that they were above average hitters, and the 2 players below 100 were only slightly below that mark. The Yankees' top 3 hitters were better than any of the Pirates' hitters, but the Pirates' worst hitter was better than the Yankees' bottom 3 hitters. The Pirates had a team OPS plus of 102, which was 6 points lower than the Yankees, but there's something to be said about a lineup without a single easy out. Well, except for the pitcher, of course. The Pirates also made up for their inferior offense with superior pitching. They again did not have any superstars on the mound, but 3 of their 4 starters had an ERA plus between 120 and 125, meaning that their ERA was 20 to 25% better than league average. Their team ERA plus was 108, 5 points higher than the Yankees. Despite their stat sheet not having any eye-popping numbers, the Pirates actually took home both the Cy Young Award and the NL MVP in 1960. There was only one Cy Young winner for both leagues prior to 1967, and in 1960 the award went to Pirates pitcher Vern Law. From a modern perspective, he probably wasn't the most deserving player, but pitcher wins and playing for a pennant-winning team were the main criteria for the award back then, and Law won 20 games for the pennant-winning Pirates. The NL MVP went to Pirates shortstop Dick Groat. Like Law, Groat benefited from a conception of value that is now considered to be antiquated. He won the National League batting title and played on the pennant-winning team, so he was basically a guarantee to win the award, even though he only hit 2 home runs. He received 16 of 22 first-place votes. In fact, not a single first-place vote was cast for a player that didn't play for the Pirates. Groat received 16 first-place votes, Pirates third baseman Don Hoke received 5, and Clemente received 1. In retrospect, the award probably should have gone to one of Hank Aaron, Frank Robinson, Ernie Banks, or Willie Mays, but Groat did have a very respectable season. Excluding pitchers, his 110 OPS plus is the 5th lowest ever for an MVP winner, but he was still worth 6.1 WAR, the 7th highest mark in the NL that season, due to his strong defense and his positional value as a shortstop. He was a very different kind of MVP than Roger Maris, though, and I think that contrast is emblematic of these 2 teams in general. The Yankees were a dynamic team in 1960. They had 2 of the best hitters in baseball, but also had some big holes in their lineup. They had hot streaks where they would win 22 of 26 games, but also cold streaks, during which they would go 10 and 13. They switched up their lineup constantly, and all but 2 players played multiple positions during the season. The Pirates, on the other hand, were a consistent team. No superstar hitters, but every batter in the lineup could hit. No massive hot streaks, but no cold streaks either. Not a single player in their starting lineup played any position other than their primary position. The 1960 World Series was the tortoise against the hare, and we all know what they say about slow and steady.
It was just 33 years ago to this day, October the 5th, that these same 2 teams battled for the baseball championship. And in that year, 1927, the Yankees swept through the Pirates in 4 straight, and the Yankees are favored again this year.
October 5th, 1960. Game 1 of the World Series between the New York Yankees and the Pittsburgh Pirates at Forbes Field in Pittsburgh. That's right, despite winning 2 fewer games than the Yankees, the Pirates had home field advantage. Why? Because prior to 2003, home field advantage simply alternated between the National League and American League each year. The American League's Chicago White Sox had home field advantage in their World Series matchup against the Dodgers in 1959, so now it was the National League's turn. And that's kind of a big deal, as both the Yankees and the Pirates were significantly better at home than they were on the road in 1960. It would be especially important if the series were to go 7 games, as the Pirates would have the edge playing Game 7 in Pittsburgh. Art Ditmar started Game 1 for the Yankees, with Cy Young winner Vern Law starting for the Pirates. Roger Maris started off the game with a bang, hitting a solo home run in the top of the first, but the Pirates came right back in the bottom half of the frame. Center fielder Bill Verdon led off with a walk, then took off in an attempt to steal second. Verdon wasn't much of a base stealer. He stole only 8 bags during the regular season while being caught twice. His 8 stolen bases in 1960 is actually his career high. For his career, he was actually caught stealing more often than he was successful. 1962 was his most embarrassing season in that regard, as he was caught stealing an MLB leading 13 times, while only stealing successfully 5 times. In fact, the 1960 Pirates as a team weren't big on trying to steal bases. They had only 58 stolen base attempts during the regular season, and only 34 of those 58 attempts were successful. They had the second least stolen base attempts of any MLB team, and were in the bottom 5 in stolen base success rate. Nevertheless, in their very first opportunity in the World Series, they attempted to steal a base. Yogi Berra fired the ball towards second in an attempt to throw Vernon out, but the Yankees' normally outstanding defense was caught napping. Second baseman Bobby Richardson and shortstop Tony Kubek both raced for the bag, but neither got there in time. The ball flew into center field, and Verdon advanced to third. It was scored as a stolen base and an E6. NL MVP Dick Groat lined the very next pitch into right field for an RBI double. The next batter, Bob Skinner, singled on a ground ball up the middle, and Groat came around to score. The Pirates had taken the lead 2-1, and Ditmar had yet to record an out. He did get the next batter, first baseman Dick Stewart, to line out to Roger Maris, but Pittsburgh kept their foot on the gas. Roberto Clemente came up to bat next, and on the first pitch to Clemente, Skinner took off for second. He was safe, and Berra's throw nearly ended up in center field once again. It went past Bobby Richardson, who was covering second base, but fortunately, Kubek was backing up, and he was able to keep the ball in the infield. That said, Skinner would end up scoring anyway, as Clemente hit a grounder up the middle for an RBI single. Art Ditmar was promptly taken out of the game and replaced by Jim Coates, who got out of the inning without any more damage. The 1960 Pittsburgh Pirates were not a risk-taking team. They didn't steal bases. Yet, they stole 2 in the first inning of the World Series. Did they have a scouting report on Berra? Did they know he was having trouble throwing? Or were they just trying to switch up their style? The 1960 New York Yankees had one of the best defensive infields ever, yet they let 2 batted balls and 1 thrown ball pass them in the first inning. It doesn't matter who you were or what you did during the regular season. Anything can happen in the World Series. The second and third innings came and went without any additional scoring. The Pirates were still ahead 3-1 heading into the top of the 4th. Roger Maris led off the frame with a grounder up the middle for a single. Mantle followed with a walk, giving the Yankees runners on first and second with no outs. Yogi Berra then came up to bat, and hit a fly ball to deep right center field. If he had hit it just a few feet farther, it would have given the Yankees a 4-3 lead. Instead, it was just a long out, as Bill Verdon caught it up against the wall. Maris tagged and went to third, leaving the Yankees with runners on first and third with 1 out. Bill Skowron came up next and lined a single to left field, driving in Maris from third and bringing the Yankees within 1 run. Unfortunately for New York, they were unable to add on any more as Gil McDougald, who had come in to play third base in the second inning, popped out, and Bobby Richardson flied out. The Yankees' top 3 bats generated some offense, but the rest of their lineup couldn't keep it going. Is it flied out or flew out, by the way? Like, I know flied in terms of like the past tense of the verb to fly, as in like what a bird does or like what you do on a plane. That would be flew, but I feel like in the baseball sense, you don't say like he flew out, you would say flied instead. I don't know. I put a poll on Twitter, and only 4 people responded to the poll. Follow me on Twitter, by the way. Links in the description. But yeah, I feel like flied sounds better to me personally. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. It was 1 step closer and 2 steps back for the Yankees in the 4th. In the bottom half of the frame, with Jim Coates still on the mound, Don Hoke walked, and Bill Mazeroski followed it up with a 2-run home run to left field, giving the Pirates a 5-2 lead. The Yankees failed to score against Vern Law in the top half of the 5th, and Duke Moss, who came in to replace Jim Coates, held the Pirates scoreless in the bottom half. The Pirates did add another run in the bottom of the 6th, however, as Mazeroski singled, Law bunted him to second, and Verdon drove him home with a line drive double to right. No runs were scored on either side in the 7th, though Bob Skinner was removed from the game after getting hit by a pitch. This, coupled with him jamming his thumb while sliding into a base in the 5th, was enough for Gino Cimoli to be called on to take his spot in left field. He wouldn't return to the Pirates lineup until Game 7. Spoiler alert, it's going 7 games. While Yankees starting pitcher Art Ditmar had lasted only 5 batters and was credited with only 1/3 of an inning pitched, Vern Law pitched into the 8th. After allowing back-to-back singles to Hector Lopez and Roger Maris to start the inning, and with Mantle, Berra, and Skowron due up next, Law was taken out. and Roy Face, the Pirates' top bullpen arm, came in to pitch. He proceeded to strike out Mantle looking, induce a weak fly ball from Berra for an out, and then strike out Skowron swinging. The Yankees did put up a fight in the ninth, with Face still on the mound. McDougall led off the inning with a single to right field. Richardson grounded into a fielder's choice, leaving the Yankees with a runner on first and one out with the pitcher due up. Since the Yankees had taken out their starting pitcher in the first inning, they had already used their main pinch hitters. Johnny Blanchard pinch hit for Coates in the fifth, and Bob Cerv pinch hit for Moss in the seventh. They also had Dale Long pinch hit for Clete Boyer in the second, and McDougald came in as a defensive replacement at third base afterwards. This left the Yankees with two options on the bench. Joe DeMaestri, who had an OPS plus of 34 during the regular season, or Elston Howard, who, despite being an all-star, had one of his worst offensive seasons of his career in 1960, with an OPS plus of 80. They went with Howard, and he proceeded to launch a two-run home run over the right field wall. Tony Kubek followed with a single up the middle, but the comeback attempt ended there, as Face got the next batter, Hector Lopez, to ground into a game-ending double play. The Pirates took Game 1 by a score of 6-4. The pitching matchup for Game 2 featured two Bobs, Bob Turley for the Yankees and Bob Friend for the Pirates. Both teams tweaked their lineups from Game 1. This was standard for the Yankees, of course. They shifted players all over the place during the regular season. For Game 2, they moved Berra from catcher to left field in place of Lopez, who ended Game 1 by hitting into a double play. Elston Howard, who hit the pinch hit home run in the ninth of Game 1, started behind the plate. Gil McDougald started Game 2 at third base after taking Boyer's place at third early on in Game 1. For the Pirates, Rocky Nelson took Dick Stewart's place at first base, and Gino Cimoli replaced the injured Bob Skinner in left field. Ultimately, these small changes wouldn't matter too much, as Game 2 was anything but close. After two scoreless innings, the Yankees struck first in the top of the third. Bobby Richardson led off the inning with a walk, and he was then bunted over to second by pitcher Bob Turley. Tony Kubek drove Richardson in with a single up the middle, then McDougald drove Kubek in with a double to left. An inning later, Richardson would score another run, as he reached on a two-out single up the middle, advanced to second on a passed ball, and then was driven home by pitcher Bob Turley, who singled to center field. Turley did get into some trouble in the bottom of the fourth. Gino Cimoli led off with a line drive single to right, and catcher Smokey Burgess followed with a ground ball single through the hole between second and first. Cimoli advanced to third on the hit. Don Hoke then came up to the plate and hit a line drive double to right field. Cimoli scored, but Burgess was held up at third. The Pirates had runners on second and third with no outs and one run already in. Bill Mazeroski came to bat next, and Turley managed to retire him on a line drive to third base. Not only did this get Turley a much-needed out, but it also kept the runners from advancing. The pitcher's spot was up next, and the Pirates pinch hit for Bob Friend with Gene Baker. Baker was an interesting choice, as he wasn't a particularly good hitter. He managed just a 43 OPS plus in only 40 plate appearances during the regular season. He had 9 hits, and all 9 of them were singles. This normally would have been a spot for Gino Cimoli or Rocky Nelson to come in and hit, but they were both starting, so Baker it was. A hit would have been ideal for Pittsburgh, of course, but a somewhat deep fly ball or a grounder to the right side would have also been enough to get a run in. Instead, Baker hit a pop-up to second base, and the runners had to stay put at second and third. Bill Verding came up next and grounded out to second base, allowing Turley to escape danger with only 1 run allowed. After 4, the score was 3-1 New York. And then the floodgates opened. Mickey Mantle hit a 2-run homer in the 5th off of Fred Green to make it 5-1, and then the Yankees scored 7 runs in the 6th off of 3 different pitchers. How they scored those runs is quite interesting, though. This rally was not led by the Yankees' 2 superstars, but rather by pretty much everyone else. Elston Howard hit a triple, Bobby Richardson hit an RBI double, then Turley grounded out for the first out. Tony Kubek reached on an uncharacteristic error by Dick Grote, then McDougald drove in Richardson and moved Kubek to second on a single to left field. Then Maris and Mantle came to the bat, with an opportunity to do some real damage. But Maris walked on 5 pitches, and Mantle struck out looking for the second out of the inning. The rest of the Yankees lineup picked up right where they left off, though. Yogi Berra singled, Bill Skowron singled, Elston Howard singled, and Bobby Richardson singled. Bob Turley finally made the third out of the inning with a fly ball to center field. The Yankees scored 7 runs with 0 home runs, 0 hits from their 2 superstars, and with the pitcher coming up to bat twice in the inning. 6 of the 7 runs were driven in by singles. The Yankees now led 12-1. The Yankees added 3 more runs in the 7th thanks to a 3-run homer from Mickey Mantle. It was his second homer of the game. Mantle would score another run in the ninth on a wild pitch, and the Yankees would take a 16-1 lead into the bottom of the final frame. Bob Turley took the mound in the ninth, trying to finish his fantastic one-run start himself, but it wasn't meant to be. He recorded one out, but allowed 2 more runs after a hit by pitch, 3 singles, and a throwing error by Bobby Richardson. Bobby Shantz came in to finish the game, and did so promptly by inducing a double play. Shantz would actually be the only Yankee to play in Game 2 and not record a hit, and he didn't even have an opportunity to, of course. Every other Yankee got at least 1 hit, including Bob Turley, as well as Joe DeMaestri and Clete Boyer, who both came into the game as defensive replacements in the 6th inning. The series headed to the Bronx tied at 1 game apiece. Game 3 was another blowout, and it was clear that it would be from the get-go. Future Hall of Famer Whitey Ford was on the bump for New York, facing off against Pittsburgh's Vinegar Bend Mizell. Ford retired the side in order on 10 pitches in the top of the first, then the Yankees scored 6 runs in the bottom of the first. Mizell gave up a single to Bob Cerv, who started Game 3 in left field for the Yankees instead of Lopez or Berra, got Maris to line out to right field, gave up another single to Mantle, gave up a third single to Skowron, which resulted in Cerv coming around to score, then walked McDougald on 4 pitches to load the bases. McDougald would be the last batter Mizell would face, as Clem Labine would take over pitching duties. Reminiscent of Art Ditmar in Game 1, Mizell was credited with only 1/3 of an inning pitched. And in retrospect, I think taking Mizell out of the game so early was a mistake. All 3 of the hits he had allowed were singles, and all 3 of them were on ground balls that found a hole to get through the infielders. Obviously, the 4-pitch walk to McDougald wasn't ideal, but the hits he allowed were more a result of bad luck rather than poor pitching. Don't you want pitchers inducing ground balls? Especially with Dick Groat and Bill Mazeroski on defense? Labine came in and immediately gave up an infield single to Elston Howard, resulting in another run scoring and the bases remaining loaded. Then, after an 8-pitch at-bat, Bobby Richardson,
Little Bobby Richardson, one of the smallest men in baseball,
did this.
3-2 pitch to Richardson. A swing and a fly ball, well hit left field, way back. It's out of here. A grand slam home run.
Labine then gave up a single to Tony Kubek, got an out on a Whitey Ford sac bunt, then gave up another single to Bob Cerv before he too was pulled. Fred Green came in, the 3rd pitcher Pittsburgh had used in the inning, and was finally able to stop the bleeding by inducing a pop-up from Roger Maris. Whitey Ford then took the mound again and threw another 10-pitch 1-2-3 inning. He retired all 3 men he faced in the 3rd inning as well, but he was showing signs of slipping. It took him 12 pitches to do it this time. Ford's perfect game was broken up in the 4th, as Bill Verdon led off the frame with a double to right field. Ford retired the next 3 batters in order, though, as the Pirates stranded Verdon at second base. Then, Ford decided he wasn't satisfied with a 6-run cushion. He wanted more. So he led off the bottom of the 4th with a line drive single. He now had just as many hits in the game as the entire Pirates team had against him. Bob Cerv and Roger Maris each made an out, but Mickey Mantle came through with a 2-out, 2-run home run to extend the lead to 8-0. The Yankees weren't done there, however. Bill Skowron hit a 2-out single. Gil McDougald hit another 2-out single. Pirates pitcher Fred Green was taken out of the game and replaced by Red Witt. Elston Howard hit a 3rd 2-out single. Bobby Richardson was up with the bases loaded once again. He didn't homer this time, but he did hit the Yankees' 4th consecutive single, and drove in 2 runs in the process. Witt then intentionally walked Kubek to load the bases for Ford, who grounded out to end the inning. The score was now 10-0. It had been a long inning, and a tough one for Ford. He had been up to bat twice, had to run the bases. It was going to be hard for him to get back into his pitching groove. Just kidding, he retired the side in order on 9 pitches. 10-0 would end up as the final score for Game 3. Whitey Ford pitched a complete game shutout, allowing only 4 hits and 1 walk. The Pirates, on the other hand, needed 6 pitchers to get through the game. It seemed like the Yankees were on their way to another World Series victory. Their offense was on fire, even beyond Mantle and Maris. Tony Kubek was hitting. Gil McDougald was hitting. Elston Howard was hitting. Even little Bobby Richardson, one of the smallest men in baseball, was hitting. With the exception of Ditmar in Game 1, their pitching was dominant as well. And perhaps the biggest advantage that the Yankees had at this point was that they only needed 2 more wins, and the next 2 games would be at Yankee Stadium. Not only would the Pirates have to cool down the Yankees' bats, but they would also have to do it in the stadium in which the Yankees went 55-22 during the regular season. Game 4. The Pirates handed the ball back to Cy Young winner Vern Law, while the Yankees turned to Ralph Terry. Terry was a bit of an interesting choice for New York. He was the fourth man in the Yankees' rotation for most of the regular season, but it was pretty standard to use a three-man rotation in the World Series. Perhaps they didn't trust Ditmar after Game 1, but I don't believe that to be the case as, spoiler alert, he started Game 5. It seems like the Yankees wanted to go with a fourth man, but that still doesn't make Ralph Terry the obvious choice. There was also Bill Stafford, the 22-year-old rookie that came up during the regular season and had a stellar 2.25 ERA in 60 innings pitched. But can you really trust a rookie in the World Series? I mean, I'd probably say yes, but Yankees manager Casey Stengel apparently couldn't. It's not like Terry was a reliable, grizzled vet. He was only 2 years older than Stafford. But he had a few years of additional experience in the big leagues, and even though his upside was much lower than Stafford's, I guess Stengel thought his floor was higher. Regardless of the reasoning, it was Law versus Terry in Game 4, and the first few innings passed fairly uneventfully. The Yankees did threaten in the bottom of the first, as a Bob serve single, Tony Kubek double, and intentional walk to Mickey Mantle loaded the bases with only one out, but Law was able to get Yogi Berra to ground into a double play, ending the inning without any damage. Ralph Terry made Stengel look like a genius, as he did not allow a single Pirates hit through the first 4 frames. The Yankees struck first in the bottom of the fourth, as a Bill Skowron home run gave them a 1-0 lead. It wouldn't take long for the Pirates to respond, though. Gino Smoley led off the fifth with the Pirates' first hit of the game, a single to right field. Smokey Burgess then reached on a fielder's choice that didn't result in an out, as Smoley beat the throw to second base. After Don Hoke popped up a bunt attempt and Bill Mazeroski popped out to first base, Terry appeared to be out of danger, with 2 outs and pitcher Vern Law coming up to bat. But Law ripped the first pitch to left field for a double, driving in Smoley and moving Burgess to third. Bill Verdon then hit a little blooper to center field that dropped for a base hit, allowing both Burgess and Law to score. Terry got the next batter, Dick Grote, to pop out, but the Pirates came away from the inning with a 3-1 lead. The pitcher's duel continued in the bottom half of the fifth and through the sixth. After allowing 2 base runners in the top of the seventh, Terry was replaced by Bobby Shantz, who got out of the jam unscathed. The Yankees got a rally of their own going in the bottom half of the seventh. Bill Skowron got things started with a leadoff double, and Gil McDougald moved him over to third with a single to right field. Bobby Richardson grounded out to second, but avoided the double play, and Skowron came in to score, decreasing the Pirates' lead to 1 run. The pitcher's spot was up next, and Johnny Blanchard pinch hit for Shantz. He hit a single, giving the Yankees runners on first and second with 1 out. Vern Law was taken out in favor of Roy Face, who proceeded to get Bob Serve to fly out and Tony Kubek to ground out to end the inning. Face stayed in the game for the 8th inning and retired the heart of the Yankees lineup, Maris, Mantle, and Berra, on 12 pitches. He completed the 8-out save in the 9th with another 1-2-3 inning. He faced 8 batters and retired all 8 of them to maintain the Pirates' narrow 3-2 lead and secure the victory for Pittsburgh. Through 4 games, the Yankees had outscored the Pirates 32-12, but the series was now tied at 2 games apiece. The Pirates had won 2 close games, and the Yankees had won 2 blowouts. Game 5 was important for the obvious reason that whoever won it would only need to win 1 more game to win the series, but this importance was exacerbated by the fact that Game 5 would be the final game at Yankee Stadium. If the Yankees lost Game 5, they would need to win 2 games in a row in Pittsburgh. If the Pirates lost, they would also need to win 2 games in a row, obviously, but they would have home field advantage in both games. The Yankees went back to Ditmar for Game 5, and the Pirates gave the ball to Harvey Haddix for the first time in the series. Haddix was the 4th arm in Pittsburgh's 4-man rotation. Pirates manager Danny Murtaugh was evidently apprehensive about going back to Friend or Mizell after they got roughed up in Games 2 and 3 respectively, so he chose to go with a new arm that the Yankees had yet to see. The Yankees went with the same starting fielders as Games 3 and 4. Bob Serve in left, Gil McDougald at third, Elston Howard behind the plate, and Hector Lopez, Clete Boyer, and Yogi Berra on the bench. The first inning for Ditmar went much better than his previous start. He retired Verdon, Grote, and Clemente in order. The second inning is where he imploded this time. He gave up a leadoff single to Dick Stewart, a double to Smokey Burgess, allowed 1 run on a fielder's choice NE5 combo, then allowed 2 more runs to score on a double by Bill Mazeroski. He was removed from the game and replaced by Luis Arroyo, who got out of the inning with the score still 3-0. Art Ditmar had now made 2 starts in the 1960 World Series, and was credited with a total of 1 2/3 innings pitched. The Yankees did score 1 run in the bottom half, as Elston Howard continued to be red hot with a double to right. He then moved to third on a ground out from Richardson and scored on a ground out from Kubek. The Yankees immediately gave it back in the top of the third, though, as Arroyo gave up a leadoff double to Grote, followed by an RBI single from Clemente. Then, Casey Stengel did something he probably should have done either the previous game or at the start of this one. He gave the ball to rookie Bill Stafford. Stafford proceeded to retire the next 3 batters on 10 pitches. Roger Maris hit a solo homer in the bottom of the third to make the score 4-2, and that score stuck for a while. After retiring all 3 batters he faced in the third, Stafford also faced the minimum in the 4th inning, the 5th inning, and the 6th inning. Harvey Haddix, of all people, hit a single off of him with 2 outs in the 7th, and Bill Verdon followed Haddix's hit up with a double, but Haddix did not score on the play. Stafford then induced a flyout from Grote to complete his 5th consecutive scoreless inning in relief. The only problem for New York was that Haddix had found his groove and was matching Stafford every step of the way. Haddix also breezed through the 4th, 5th, and 6th as the Yankees failed to get a hit in any of those innings. New York finally got a little bit of momentum going in the bottom of the 7th, however. Bobby Richardson started off the inning with a lineout, but Tony Kubek reached on a line drive single to center field. The pitcher's spot was up next, which meant the end of the road for Bill Stafford, as Hector Lopez came in to pinch hit. Lopez hit another line drive single, giving the Yankees runners on first and second with 1 out. The Pirates went to Roy Face, and just like he had done in games 1 and 4, he got out of the jam he was brought into without allowing a run. The Yankees brought in Ryan Duran to pitch the 8th, and he retired Clemente, Stewart, and Samoli in order. Face stayed in for the Pirates and pitched a scoreless 8th inning himself. Interestingly, with 2 outs and a runner on first in the 8th, the Yankees chose to pinch hit for Elston Howard, who was hitting .462 with a 1.423 OPS in the series, with Yogi Berra. Berra grounded out to second to end the inning. The Pirates added an insurance run in the top of the 9th after a Smokey Burgess single, a wild pitch, and a Don Hoke grounder up the middle that got through to the outfield for a base hit. The Yankees entered the bottom of the 9th down by 3 runs, with the bottom of the order due up, and Roy Face still on the mound. Richardson grounded out to short for the first out, and Kubek popped out to short for the second out. Johnny Blanchard was brought in to pinch hit for the pitcher, and he flew, out to right field to end the game. The Pirates took Game 5 and took a 3-2 series lead back to Pittsburgh. Let's take a look at where we're at statistically before we head into Game 6. Unsurprisingly, Mickey Mantle has been the top bat for New York, with Elston Howard also hitting extraordinarily well. The Yankees' offensive numbers as a whole are a lot more impressive than the Pirates, despite the Pirates now being up in the series. From a pitching perspective, the Yankees appear to have the edge overall as well, with Whitey Ford being the best pitcher thus far for either team. And Ford was exactly who the Yankees turned to for Game 6. Casey Stengel also made some changes to the Yankees lineup as they prepared to take on Pirates Game 6 starter Bob Friend. Clete Boyer started at third base for the first time since Game 1, and Yogi Berra started in left field. Gil McDougald and Bob Cerv got the day off. The Pirates subbed out Smokey Burgess for Hal Smith. The first inning came and went without much to write home about, but things got interesting in the top of the second inning.
Mantle's been up 16 times, has 7 runs batted in, has walked 7 times, has struck out 7 times, and he's got a total of 16 bases.
Yes, you heard that right. That's radio play-by-play commentator Chuck Thompson talking about Mickey Mantle's total bases in the 1960 World Series. Anyone who tells you that batting average was all that mattered until 10 years ago when a bunch of nerds decided that extra base hits are more valuable than singles is a filthy liar. Nerds have been saying that for decades. Oh, that's not the interesting part though.
1 ball, 2 strikes, the count to Mantle. Left-hand batter against the right-hand tosses of Friend. Here comes the pitch. A bunt right back to the mound. Grabbed by Friend. He throws to first. In time, and that's all for Mantle. That's the second time we've seen Mantle bunting with a count of 2 strikes on him.
That's the interesting part. Why is one of the best hitters on the planet bunting at all, let alone with no one on base and with 2 strikes? Bizarre. Berra came up to bat next and walked. Skowron then singled to right field, bringing up the red-hot Elston Howard with runners on first and third and 1 out. On a 2-2 count, Friend tried to jam Howard with the pitch inside, but the pitch went too far inside and hit Howard on his right hand. Howard initially walked down to take his base at first, but before the next pitch could be thrown, he went to the dugout and was replaced by pinch runner Eli Gerba, who was a pitcher, by the way. Howard's hand was broken. One of the Yankees' hottest hitters was out for the rest of the series. Bobby Richardson came up to bat with the bases loaded.
And no one needs to be reminded about what this little fella from Sumter, South Carolina did with the bases loaded in Yankee Stadium.
This time, though, he hit a fly ball to center for the second out of the inning. With the bases still loaded, Whitey Ford stepped up to the plate. He hit a little dribbler on the third base side of the pitcher's mound. Friend fielded the ball and fired home for the force out, but his throw was not in time. Ford reached with an RBI single. He now had 10 innings pitched in the series and had driven in more runs than he had allowed. Clete Boyer was up next, and he struck out swinging on 3 pitches to end the Yankees' rally. New York went into the bottom of the second with an early 1-0 lead. Because of the flexibility of their roster, the Yankees had options for how they would deal with Howard's injury. They could have moved Berra from left field to catcher and put Lopez or Serve in left field. Instead, they chose to put third-string catcher Johnny Blanchard, who had appeared a few times in the series as a pinch hitter, behind the plate. Perhaps manager Casey Stengel remembered how willing the Pirates were to run on Berra in Game 1, and he wanted to prevent that from happening again. Ford threw another scoreless inning in the bottom of the second, and the Yankees got back to work offensively in the top of the third. Tony Kubek was hit by a pitch on an 0-2 count, giving the Yankees a leadoff base runner. Roger Maris then hit a double to right field, moving Kubek over to third. Mantle singled on a grounder up the middle, scoring both runners and increasing the Yankees' lead to 3. After Yogi Berra hit another single up the middle, Friend was removed from the game, and Tom Chaney took his place. Unfortunately for Pittsburgh, Chaney wasn't as adept at working out of jams as Roy Face. The first batter he faced, Bill Skowron, drove in a run with a sacrifice fly. Then, little Bobby Richardson drove in 2 more runs, with a triple to left field. This hit brought Richardson's RBI total up to 11 in the series, breaking the single series record of 10 that had been set by Yogi Berra 4 years prior. Richardson was an incredibly unlikely player to break this record. He only had 26 RBIs in 150 games played during the regular season. Chaney managed to get the next 2 batters out with Richardson stranded on third, but the Yankees now had a 6-run lead. With the way Whitey Ford was pitching though, it may as well have been a 50-run lead. Bottom of the third. Strikeout, ground out, strikeout. Inning over. Bottom of the fourth. Ground out, strikeout. Inning over. Bottom of the fifth. I think I'll start with a single, Hal Smith says. I'll be patient and work my way on base too, Don Hook says. Double play. Strikeout. Inning over. Fred Green came in to pitch the 6th for the Pirates, and the Yankees remembered how much they liked hitting against him. So they hit against him. Clete Boyer hit a leadoff triple, Tony Kubek drove him in with a single to right, Roger Maris then hit another single to right, moving Kubek over to third, and that was it for Fred Green. 3 batters, 3 hits, 0 outs. Clem Labine took his place. Fortunately for the Yankees, they liked hitting against him too. Mantle struck out, but Yogi Berra drove in 2 more runs with a ground ball single through the gap between first and second. Skowron then hit into a double play to end the inning, but the Yankees' lead was now 8-0, and they weren't done. After another scoreless inning from Ford in the bottom of the 6th, the Yankees got back to work in the 7th, with Labine still on the mound for Pittsburgh. Johnny Blanchard led off with a double, then Richardson drove him in with his 2nd triple of the game. His RBI record was now 12. Whitey Ford then came up to bat and laid down a squeeze bunt in a 9-0 game. No unwritten rules in the World Series, I guess. It was successful. Richardson beat the throw home, giving Ford his 2nd RBI of the game. He had now driven in 2 runs this series, while allowing 0, in 15 innings pitched. Labine managed to get 3 outs without allowing any more runs to score in the 7th, but Murtaugh let him go back out for the 8th, presumably signaling that he had given up on the game. The Yankees scored 2 more runs off of him in the 8th, courtesy of a Roger Maris single, a Yogi Berra single, and a Johnny Blanchard double. 12-0 would be the final score of Game 6. Whitey Ford finished the game himself, giving him 2 complete game shutouts in 2 starts. 18 innings pitched, 0 runs allowed, 2 runs driven in as a batter. The Yankees had now scored 46 runs in the series, compared to only 17 for the Pirates. But none of that mattered. Baseball isn't scored on aggregate. Each team had won 3 games. All that mattered now was Game 7. Win the game, win the series. October 13th, 1960. Forbes Field, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Because of the 2 days off between Games 5 and 6, the Yankees and Pirates both had options for who they wanted as their starting pitcher. The Game 6 starters, Whitey Ford and Bob Friend, were the only ones off the table. The Pirates went with Vern Law for the 3rd time in the series, and the Yankees opted for Game 2's winning pitcher, Bob Turley. Johnny Blanchard started at catcher for the Yankees in place of the injured Elston Howard, and Berra started in left. Bob Skinner returned to the lineup for the Pirates after leaving Game 1 with an injury and took his left field spot back from Gino Cimoli. Rocky Nelson started at first over Dick Stewart. The Yankees moved new single World Series RBI record holder Bobby Richardson from the bottom of the lineup to the leadoff spot. He stepped into the batter's box to start the game, and, unlike games 1 through 6, we actually have footage of it. Back in 1960, it was not standard practice to keep and store recordings of baseball broadcasts, as film was expensive, took up a lot of space, and had to be stored in proper conditions to avoid damage. The only reason we have footage of this historic Game 7 is because of singer, actor, and former Pirates co-owner Bing Crosby. He was in Europe during the 1960 World Series, specifically because watching the Pirates play the Yankees made him nervous and he wanted to get away from it. However, he had apparently hired a company to record the Game 7 broadcast for him so that, if the Pirates won, he could watch it when he returned home. Crosby died in 1977, and the knowledge of the Game 7 film died with him. The reels sat in his wine cellar for decades until they were discovered in 2010. Bing Crosby's anxiety at watching his own team play ball is the only reason we can watch this historic game today. During Richardson's at-bat to lead off the game, the Yankees already had activity in their bullpen. Both Bill Stafford and Bobby Shantz started to warm up before starter Bob Turley threw a single pitch. Stengel planned to use all of his available arms to his advantage. Did you think the bullpen game was a new phenomenon? Something that the 2018 Rays invented, perhaps? Stengel did it 38 years before the Rays franchise even existed, in Game 7 of the World Series. Before we get any deeper into the Game 7 action, let's talk quickly about win expectancy and win probability added. Win expectancy is how likely a team is to win given the inning, score, men on base, and number of outs. At the end of each at-bat, the situation changes, and therefore the win expectancy changes. The change in win expectancy after an at-bat is called win probability added. If a team's win expectancy was 50% at the start of a plate appearance, but then the player at bat does something to increase the team's win expectancy to, let's say, 55%, then the batter is credited with a 5% win probability added. In addition to single game win expectancy, there's also championship win expectancy, which measures the likelihood not of winning just a single game, but the World Series. This is what the 1960 World Series win expectancy graph looked like heading into Game 7. It's pretty much what you would expect. The Yankees were favorites when they were up 2-1, and the Pirates were favorites when they were up 3-2, and they were roughly at 50% when they were tied. Now that we're in Game 7 though, each at-bat will have a much larger effect on championship win expectancy, because there are no more games to play, no more chances to make up for losses. In Game 7, single game win expectancy is championship win expectancy. The Pirates struck first in Game 7. After a 1-2-3 inning in the top half, Bob Skinner worked a 2-out walk, and the decision to start Rocky Nelson at first over Dick Stewart paid dividends immediately, as Nelson pulled a 2-run home run over the right field wall. Nelson's home run had a championship win probability added of 19.22%, and at the end of the first inning, the Pirates led 2-0 and had a 71% likelihood to win the World Series. The Yankees were retired in order again in the top of the second, and the Pirates added on in the bottom half. Turley gave up a leadoff single to Smokey Burgess, then was taken out of the game. The bullpen game began. Bill Stafford took over on the mound and walked Don Hoke to put 2 men on with still no outs. Bill Mazeroski then bunted for a hit successfully, loading the bases for the last guy the Pirates wanted at bat with the bases loaded, Vern Law, the pitcher. And Law did the worst thing he could possibly do: hit a ground ball back to Stafford. Stafford fired home for the first out, and Blanchard threw over to first for the double play. The Pirates went from bases loaded and none out to runners on second and third with 2 outs. Their win expectancy dropped from 86% to 76%. Fortunately for Pittsburgh, they still had 1 out to work with, and Bill Verdon came through with a single to right field. Both Hoke and Mazeroski scored. Stafford was able to get Grote to ground out to end the inning, but the Yankees were in quite a hole early. The Pirates led 4-0 after 2 innings of play. Their win expectancy was 87%. The Yankees once again failed to crack Law in the top of the third, and they went to their third pitcher in 3 innings in the bottom half, as Bobby Shantz took over for Stafford. Shantz pitched a scoreless third, and both Shantz and Law got through the fourth unscathed. Shantz had kept the Yankees in the game, but their offense needed to get going. The deeper into the game they got, the harder it would be to come back. They entered the 5th inning with just a 9% win expectancy. Bill Skowron led off the inning and gave the Yankees some hope with a home run to right field. It was a solo shot, and they were still 3 runs behind, but it was a step in the right direction. Law was able to get out of the inning without any additional damage, and in the bottom of the fifth, Chance pitched his third straight inning in which he faced the minimum 3 batters. The Yankees had the top of the lineup to start off the 6th inning, and Bobby Richardson started the frame with a single to center field. After walking the next batter, Tony Kubek, on a 3-2 pitch, Law's day was over. Danny Murtaugh,
who is a master at handling men,
put in Roy Face, who was now called on for the 4th time in this series to get out of an inherited jam. The first 3 times, he was able to get out of the inning without allowing a single run. This time, he had runners on first and second, no outs, and the scariest part of the Yankees lineup due up. He started off by getting Maris to pop out to third base, but Mantle managed to beat Face with a single up the middle. Richardson came around to score, and Kubek moved to third. The score was now 4-2. Yogi Berra came to the plate, and on the second pitch of the at-bat, he hit a deep fly ball to right field that just barely stayed inside the foul pole for a home run. The Yankees led 5-4. The championship win probability added from Berra's one swing of the bat was 34.42%. What I'm about to say feels like a spoiler. I mean, it shouldn't be if you've read the title, but it feels like one anyway. The 34.32% added by Berra's home run in the 6th inning of the 1960 World Series is the 4th most championship win probability added in a plate appearance by a player whose team would end up losing the World Series. The top plate appearance in a losing effort is Rajai Davis's home run off of Aroldis Chapman in the 8th inning of the 2016 World Series. The other 2 plate appearances above Berra's that fit this criteria actually didn't even happen in the World Series. One happened during the NLCS, and the other was in a regular season tiebreaker. Francisco Cabrera's walk-off single in Game 7 of the 1992 NLCS, and Bobby Thompson's shot heard round the world in 1951 had single-game win probabilities added of 73.7% and 71.1%, respectively. Even though these hits didn't happen in the World Series, Cabrera's single and Thompson's homer increased their team's likelihood of winning the World Series by over 35%. Back to 1960, the Yankees entered the 6th inning with a 13% win expectancy. After the hits from Richardson, Mantle, and Berra, and another scoreless bottom half from Chance, they finished the 6th with a 70% win expectancy. Face and Chance traded scoreless innings in the 7th. The Pirates thought they might be able to get something going in the bottom half of the inning after Smokey Burgess led off with a single, so they pinch ran for him. It only took 2 more batters for Chance to finish his 5th straight scoreless inning, however, as he got Hoke to line out and Mazeroski to hit into a double play. The score remained 5-4 heading into the time's up. We have to submit our votes for World Series MVP. The deadline's the start of the 8th inning, and that's just seconds away.
Can't we, wait, to see which team actually wins? Maybe someone will hit a really memorable walk-off home run or something.
No, of course not. What a ridiculous idea. And why is there a female sports writer anyway? What is this, the 2020s? So, who are you voting for? The Yankees are currently winning, and they have quite a few players with more impressive stat lines than anyone on the Pirates, so it seems like choosing a Yankee would be the safest bet. So, who will it be? The superstar that hit 3 homers in the series and has an on-base percentage north of 500? The pitcher who pitched 2 complete game shutouts? The small guy who hit a grand slam and broke the RBI record? It has to be one of these guys, right? Surely no one on the Pirates will do anything that will make all of us voters look silly for not being able to see the future. With all the World Series MVP votes in, the game continued into the 8th inning, and the situation got even better for New York. Face started the inning by getting Maris and Mantle out, but the Yankees continued to prove that they were not the same team that was so reliant on their 2 superstars in the regular season. The World Series Yankees had depth. Berra worked a 2-out walk, Bill Skowron reached on an infield single, and catcher Johnny Blanchard made Stengel look like a genius for starting him over Serve and Lopez by driving in Berra with a line drive to right field. Clete Boyer, who had also spent a good amount of the series on the bench, came up next and doubled in Skowron with a line drive down the left field line. 2 huge RBIs from the 7 and 8 hitters to extend the lead to 7-4. Bobby Chance came up to bat next, and Casey Stengel made the decision to leave him in the game and let him hit for himself. Chance had been terrific since coming into the game in the 3rd, but he had pitched 5 innings in relief at this point. He had to be getting tired, and the Yankees had 2 runners in scoring position. The obvious move here would have been to go to a pinch hitter, but Stengel wanted Chance to come back out and pitch the bottom of the 8th. So Chance flew out to short right field to end the inning, then took the mound for his 6th inning of work. The Pirates had 6 outs remaining to make up a 3-run deficit. Heading into the bottom of the 8th, their championship win expectancy was just 8%, 1% lower than the win expectancy the Yankees had when they entered the fifth inning down 4-0. The tides had turned completely. Pitcher Roy Face was due up first, and Danny Murtaugh went to Gino Cimoli to pinch hit. Cimoli singled on a weak fly ball to right field. Bill Verding came up to bat next and hit the second pitch of the at-bat on the ground right at shortstop Tony Kubek. It was a perfect double play ball, exactly what Chance and the Yankees were hoping for. It would be a sure thing to turn to, with the Yankees' defense being as exceptional as it was. But fate had a different idea.
There's the ground ball hit to short, knocked, and it hits Kubek in the face, and all hands are safe.
The ball took a bad hop and hit Kubek in the throat. Instead of 2 outs and the bases empty, the Pirates had runners on first and second with no outs. Frustrated, embarrassed, and in pain, Kubek was removed from the game and replaced by Joe DeMaestri. Over the next few years, Kubek would suffer various injuries and medical conditions affecting his neck and shoulder. In 1966, at the age of 29, Kubek retired from baseball due to an injured nerve in his spinal column. The cause of the nerve damage was a broken neck that Kubek had unknowingly suffered and that had not healed correctly. Kubek isn't sure when he broke his neck, but it's possible that it could have happened on this play. NL MVP Dick Groat was the next man up to bat. He hit a hard grounder between short and third for a single. Cimoli came in to score, bringing the Pirates within 2 runs, with 2 men on again and still no outs. Groat's single had a championship win probability added of 13.88%, and the Pirates' win expectancy was now up to 35%. Stengel had seen enough from Chance. It's unfortunate that his spectacular relief appearance had to end on a sour note. Jim Coates was brought in to pitch. Coates seemed to be on his way to escaping the inning, as Bob Skinner laid down a sac bunt to move the runners over, and then Rocky Nelson flew out to left field. There were runners on second and third, but Coates only needed 1 more out to preserve the Yankees' 2-run lead. Roberto Clemente came up to bat and hit a slow chopper to first base. Bill Skowron fielded the ball, but Coates couldn't get to first in time for Skowron to have a play. Bill Verding came in to score, and the Yankees' lead was now just 1 run. The next batter was Hal Smith, who was coming up to bat for the first time in the game. Smith came in to catch after Burgess was pinch run for in the 7th. He only had 7 plate appearances in the series up until this point. On a 1-2 count, Coates delivered a pitch high. Smith started to swing, but held up? Are we sure about that? I mean, I know the video quality isn't the greatest, but his bat looks way past the plane to me. We're saying that wasn't an attempt to strike at the ball? Look, I'm not here to rant about a missed call that happened 65 years ago, but that should have been strike 3. Inning over. Yankees take a 7-6 lead into the 9th. If the internet and instant replay had existed in 1960, this may be the most infamous missed call in baseball history. But fans who watched this game in 1960 saw this swing once, and didn't have the opportunity to see it again for 50 years. They had a fraction of a second to make a judgment from the view hundreds of feet away or from a grainy television broadcast. And even those who saw Smith swing didn't have the ability to double-check what they saw. Instead of the inning ending, on the very next pitch, this happened.
And Hal Smith hits a drive to deep left field. The ball is way back out there, going.
You just watched the most pivotal plate appearance in MLB history. No other play even comes close to the 63.62% championship win probability added by Smith's homer. The Pirates now led 9-7, and were 93% favorites to win the 1960 World Series. Ralph Terry took over for Coates on the mound and got Don Hoke to fly out, ending the inning. Now it was the Yankees in the hot seat. They had 3 outs to score at least 2 runs. With closer Roy Face having already pitched and been pinch hit for, the Pirates went to Bob Friend to close out the game in the 9th. It was an interesting choice, considering that Friend was credited with the loss in each of his 2 starts in the series, and that he had faced 14 batters the day before. He wasn't much sharper in Game 7 than he was in Games 2 and 6. Bobby Richardson led off with a single, and Dale Long, who pinch hit for Joe DeMaestri, followed it up with a single of his own. Those would be the only 2 batters Friend would face. Harvey Haddix came in to face AL MVP Roger Maris, who the Pirates had done a good job containing thus far in the series. Haddix managed to retire Maris on a pop-up behind home plate. Mantle came to the plate next, and Haddix didn't have as much luck with the second of New York superstars. Mantle slapped a line drive to right field, scoring Richardson and moving Long to third. The Yankees were within 1. Yogi Berra stepped into the batter's box with 1 out and runners on first and third. And what happened next was something that I could not comprehend from reading the play-by-play on Baseball Reference. Thank God for Bing Crosby, because if not for the footage, I still would have no idea what happened on this play, and I wouldn't be able to appreciate the incredible base running and baseball IQ exhibited by Mickey Mantle. Berra hit a hard grounder to first baseman Rocky Nelson, a classic double play ball, and if a double play were to be turned, the game would be over. Pittsburgh would win 9-8. Instead of throwing the ball to second to get the lead runner first, however, Nelson opted to step on first base. The vast majority of the time, this wouldn't really matter. The runner on first would typically be on his way to second, so Nelson could simply throw the ball to second, and whoever was covering second base would tag Mantle out for the double play. The only problem is that Mantle didn't run to second. Since Nelson had stepped on first base, Mantle no longer had to run to second. There was no longer a force. So instead, Mantle dove back to first. Not only did Mantle's quick thinking avoid the game-ending double play, it also allowed the tying run to score from third base. Berra was credited with an RBI on the play, breaking his tie with Lou Gehrig for the most career World Series RBIs. To this day, Berra is second all-time in World Series RBIs with 39. The only player ahead of him is Mickey Mantle, with 40. The next batter, Bill Skowron, grounded out to end the inning. The game went to the bottom of the ninth, tied 9-9. Bill Mazeroski led off the bottom of the ninth for the Pirates against pitcher Ralph Terry, and you probably already know what happened next. On the second pitch of the at-bat, he hit the only Game 7 walk-off home run in World Series history. The Pirates' championship win expectancy went from 63% to 100%, making Mazeroski's homer the sixth most pivotal play ever by championship win probability added. This one swing of the bat is likely the reason that Bill Mazeroski was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2001. It also made every World Series MVP voter kick themselves, as they had chosen to give the award to Bobby Richardson. This is the only time in baseball history that the World Series MVP was awarded to a member of the losing team. The 55 total runs scored by the Yankees was, and still is, the most runs scored by a team in a single World Series, and it's not particularly close. The Yankees scored more than twice as many runs as the Pirates, who scored only 27. New York's players, both batters and pitchers, had far more impressive stat totals than Pittsburgh's. But as we've discussed, the Yankees were a dynamic team. They had very high highs during the 1960 season, and in Games 2, 3, and 6 of the World Series. But they also had lows. The Pirates, on the other hand, were steady and consistent. And in the 1960 World Series, slow and steady won the race. Thanks for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I had no idea this video was going to be so long when I started researching and writing. I hope the length wasn't too off-putting. If you enjoy learning about baseball history, please consider subscribing. I plan to put out a lot more baseball content soon, covering topics from all different eras. See you all in the next one.